How's it going, everybody? Hope you're having a good day. You know what that means? You made it past hump day. Tomorrow's Thursday. That much closer to the weekend. And I know you're all excited about the weekend. Just because it's, the weekend. But I've been out tonight. We had this moon that was just huge. It was like hanging in the sky. It was huge. And I've got a cheap drone. I was flying it around and getting some decent video and pictures of the moon and the town I live in. At night. It's kind of neat. I wish the camera had better quality. Just a cheap drone though, so I can't complain. It does take decent pictures, especially during the day. And I don't know, it's kind of fun. I'm an amateur for sure. About everything I do is about amateur, except watch YouTube videos. I am a professional YouTube video watcher. And yeah, so I was flying that drone around, getting some pretty good pictures. And trying to figure out how I can download some of the video onto here. It's telling me it's the wrong format, and because, well, y'all know I'm an idiot when it comes to this computer, so I'm gonna have to figure it out. I'll get it figured out, I'm sure at some point. But yeah, so today, tonight actually, I'm going to talk about like the when I was talking about the 80s music and movies and things like that, seemed to go over pretty well. So I'm going to talk about what it was like for me growing up in the 80s in Mesa, Arizona, in the city. I love Arizona. I still love Arizona. Loved it then, loved it now. Think back about, I guess, like my childhood, because I moved there. I think I was 6 years old when I moved there and left when I was 14 or 15. I'm not sure which, somewhere in there. I'd have to do the math anyway. But yeah, we moved there, moved from rural Indiana, basically, to the city in Mesa, Arizona. And like I said, I loved it. I got to do a lot of different things. And it was so different than it is now, because we like ran the streets. Or I mean, we went all over on the streets, rode our bicycles. I fished a lot in the lakes that were around. And, I had friends that their families would like invite me to go out in the desert and shoot guns and ride motorcycles and spend the day at the big lakes and, that sort of stuff. And we always had fun. We were always doing something fun, especially in the summertime. But I do remember, like, it would get hot. It would get so hot you didn't even want to go outside during the day. But that's what Arizona is. But it's like a huge trade-off, because the rest of the year is just like, is awesome. I was out there, I'm going to say it was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I moved out there, fortunately. I stayed with my older sister, and I got to spend like a good part of a year back there, and as an adult. And I remember riding my bike on my motorcycle on like New Year's and Christmas. It was just great, still great. It's grown a lot. It's not, I mean, to me, especially being a kid, it was a big city when I was there, but it's just like really, it's way bigger now. But times have changed, so I don't even know. I don't even know if you'd run the streets now. Probably not like we did then. I mean, there's times where I would find myself miles away from home on my bicycle. There'd be a couple of us, 2 or 3 of us, or we'd ride to another neighborhood to find a BMX track in a vacant lot. Somebody set up a couple jumps. We'd jump our bicycles. Or later on, as I got older, it turned from bicycles to dirt bikes. And where I lived in Mesa at the time was like not far from the edge of the city, so we could ride our bicycles or even walk or ride, motorcycles from our house to the desert, to the edge of the desert. And man, the experiences I had there were just like, they were top notch. I see there's 2 people in the room. Whoever's in here, hi, thanks for stopping in, listening to me ramble on and on. I seem to do that. I said I'd be back here on hump day, so today's Wednesday, so I made it back. Still planning on doing a video. Where I live, I have access to it. It's an old nursing home, and it's empty. And I have access to go there, and I'm going to go there at night. I'm going to go there at night and make a video. I'll probably do it on my trusty old iPhone. It's just kind of freaky. It reminds me of The Shining. You guys remember that Jack Nicholson show, The Shining? I didn't realize this was back here. But yeah, I'm gonna do a video. Just show you how freaky it is, because it is kind of freaky. I wish I could do something with this wire, but I really can't. It's powering this light up above here, and it's just not long enough. And I got this other one out here somewhere. This one, yeah, it's this one. So I'm still working the kinks out, still working the bugs out. But all in all, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the way everything's turned out here. But yeah, let me back up to when I was a kid. I lived at a place where this, like, I'm not gonna say where it all began, but I was probably like 8 years old, and I lived in a housing development called Dobson Ranch, and they had like several man-made lakes that were in the desert, and they stocked them with fish. And I remember a couple of summers that I would, my mom and my stepdad worked, so they would get up and be gone at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I remember I would get out of bed at like 7 or 8 in the morning, and I would grab a couple slices of bread and a fishing pole, and I'd be gone all day. I'd go fishing all day long, and I would come back. I remember my mom was in school. She worked a full-time job, and then she went to school, and she would get home late a lot of times, and as long as we were home before her, my stepdad, he didn't care. And so there's times where I'd leave at like 7 in the morning. I wouldn't come back till 8 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And I did this like not just once or twice, but it was a lot. And I think about that now, like how many kids leave in the morning, like in the summertime, they leave and they don't come home all day, like literally all day. But I think too, we're in an age of cell phones where, people are tracking you. Parents can see where you're at, see what you're doing, see who you're talking to, and all that stuff. And us Gen Xers came from a time where there was none of that. The communication you had was writing a note and leaving it on the table and hoping that your older brothers and sisters didn't wad it up and throw it away. Yeah. I had 4 older brothers and sisters. And they used to do some tricks, man. They used to do some tricks to me because I was the youngest. One of them was my older sister. Trying to think how old I was. I was probably in like the 5th grade or 4th grade. I'm not sure. But they left a note on the door and locked the door and locked me out when I got home. When I got home from school, the door was locked. And there was a note on the door that said that they had moved. I think they moved to Asia. And yeah, it was a trick. I remember crying. I remember sitting there in the carport of the house crying because I thought they left. They locked me. I mean, all I had to do was probably go to the back door. But instead, I seen this note. And yeah, they moved, left me. And then they didn't. Then, it was over. We had a swimming pool, so we spent a lot of time in the swimming pool in the summer. Gosh, we got into some trouble. What else? My oldest brother, we were, if I remember right, my older sisters were dating these guys, or they were friends with these guys, and we were at their apartment. And I'm sure, like, somebody said, I was the youngest, so they're like, take him with you. So I was over at these guys' apartments, and I don't remember how it happened, but my older brother ended up putting my head in the toilet and flushing it. Gave me a good old-fashioned swirly. And I don't know if he even still remembers that. So if you're watching this, Scotty, I hope you remember that, because that happened. You got in trouble for it, too, because I snitched on you to Mom. So I know you got in trouble for it. I don't know how much trouble, but yeah, that happened. It was a whole different time, though. love my childhood. I mean, it wasn't perfect. We weren't rich, but we didn't go without anything either. Um, oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. I'm glad to see you on here, buddy. But yeah, um, yeah. I don't know if you remember, but it was the guys that had that Volkswagen, and yeah. Anyway, that's about all the details. We lived at Farmdale. You were out there, and that we were at their apartment for some reason. You guys were probably like drinking or whatever. No, it wasn't. It was you, because you got in trouble for it. So I don't know if anybody else. He's on the chat here and he's denying it all. That's all right. It's part of my. It was part of my childhood, and like I said, I love my childhood. So yeah, that happened. Um, I don't know if I have any more mean stories that you did to me, because you came back to the Midwest, and so you weren't out there real long. But I remember somebody got caught stealing gas caps off of cars too, and that wasn't me. Um, what else? I remember the first time I ever seen anybody shave their head. It was you. You shaved your head. So yeah, if you're out there listening, Scotty, which I know you are, yeah, I remember that stuff. We lived on Los Altos when you did that, and I think it was for wrestling or something. No, I ain't buying it. At least it did enough mean stuff. And then Candy, I remember, this is funny too. Levi's 501 button flies were the thing that everybody wore, and I remember I'd wait till she'd go to leave for school, and then she had nice blue jeans. I'd take her blue jeans and wear them, and man, she'd get pissed. Man, she would be pissed. She was kind of mean then, but once again, my siblings, I love them. I love them all, and I wouldn't change my upbringing nor my childhood for any part of it. I have so many memories I can't even keep them straight. I caught a yard on fire one time because I was a little pyro, and I was running to the rec center, and all I had was shorts on. I didn't even have a shirt on, and I had a lighter in my pocket, and I stopped and lit this little patch of grass on fire and tried to put it out with my hand and couldn't, and it just got so big I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't even take my shirt off, so I ran, and then I was so scared all day long. And when I came home, I went by there, and the whole yard was scorched black, and there were firemen's boot prints all over the sidewalk. And man, how lucky was I that house didn't catch on fire, because it was just the yard. In Arizona in the summertime, if they have grass, it just turns to dry, crispy stuff, and that's what happened. I remember that. I never got in trouble for that. I only admitted to that to a couple of people. I told my daughter, and she brings it up every now and then. But yeah, I used to get into some tangled messes for sure, and never really got in a lot of trouble. I mean, my mom was good about grounding us, or trying to ground us, but it never really lasted because, she was in school and she worked, and that was it. But like I said, had a lot of fun. Once again, a lot of memories. I remember, like I said, fishing. That's where I learned to fish. And then later on, before we moved, the last couple of years I was there is where I really learned how to ride motorcycles in the desert. Hitting jumps and ride three-wheelers. I loved riding three-wheelers and bicycles. Another story. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Keanu Reeves in it was filmed. Part of it was filmed at I think it's called Gulfland, USA, and that's in Mesa. It's right off of the 60 freeway, right near Tempe. It's actually on. It's off a Country Club Drive, I believe. Country Club Drive in the 60. But anyway, part of it was filmed. Part of the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was filmed at that place. And if you recall, they lost Napoleon, and they were trying to think of where he would go. And they were like, Waterloo. Well, that's where they ended up going, where there were water slides, and it was a big made out to be a castle, and there were video games and stuff inside, and they made pizza, and ultimately it grew into bumper boats and go-karts and putt golf and all that stuff. The putt golf was always there. But the fun part of that story is I remember on Sundays going there a couple of different times with a couple of different friends, and we would ride our bicycles on the putt golf courses while they were being built. And then later on, the place opened, and I spent a lot of time there. But it was just kind of cool because now I can watch that movie and say, hey, I remember when that place was being built. Yeah, and it was right on, I think it was Country Club. It was Country Club and the 60, right? You could see the water slides right next to the freeway. And we lived probably, I don't know, a couple miles from that place. So it was nothing to walk or ride our bicycles to it. That was fun. Got in trouble there a couple of different times, if I'm not mistaken. But we learned early on, like how you had to have a wristband to get on the water slides. And me and one of my friends, Jimmy, we learned that we could go up to the window and say that we lost our wristband coming down the water slide. We were just young kids, and these girls would be like, oh, okay. And they'd give us another wristband, and then we'd be able to slide down the slides all day. And it didn't cost anything, but we had to jump this fence to get inside of it to be able to do that, get in the pool and get wet. And then, so yeah, we had this whole scam going on at 12, 13 years old. It was a pretty good scam. We got to hit the water slides and didn't have to pay for it, which I didn't have the money to do it anyway. I mean, I remember I had friends that we go to the arcade and their moms, dads or whatever would give them like $10 or $20 to play video games. And I was lucky if I got $1 or $2. So, but having 5, 6 kids and trying to pay the bills, you can't just be doling money out like you would at a strip club when you're 25. But yeah, that was another thing. Like I said, I keep bringing fishing up because, man, I used to fish so much. And there was another place that when it was in another neighborhood that we lived, there was a place called Pinball Palace, and it was an arcade, and it was just like a lot of memories there playing video games. Because you have to understand, in like, when would that be? 84, 83, 1983, 1984. Video games were in the infancy, man, and there were some good ones. And they've evolved into this whole, like, totally different thing, which I'm 53 years old and I still play video games probably daily. I've got an Xbox that I spend a lot of money on, and it's a lot of entertainment. It absorbs a lot of my time, and since I got this damn thing hooked to me, I gotta find ways to occupy my time. But I'll say this too, and I'm going to change gears a little bit. About 4 weeks ago, somewhere in there, the doctors put me on new meds, and man, the last couple of days I've been outside. I was working on my boss's car, trying to get it fixed. It's not really broken. The check engine light's on. I'm trying to get the check engine light off, so as it gets colder, she can start using the remote start. But my point is like, I spent the last probably 8 months, 10 months, like really not doing anything because I haven't felt good enough to do it. Haven't been able to breathe very well, lose my breath, don't have a lot of ambition, don't have a lot of energy, to where now, like, I have a hard time going to sleep, and it's the meds. I know it's the meds. It's like I eat everything I can see, and I have a hard time sleeping. Those are the two side effects that the medication's affecting me, and I've kind of got a grip on that a little bit, as far as the eating, and I take pills to go to sleep. So I got it under control. But the whole point of that little part of the story is like, I've been able to get out and do things I haven't done in a long time. And I'm just thankful to I'm thankful that I can do that. Thankful to God. Thankful that I can do that. I still have to carry a tank around with me, which I do, and I attribute it not just to the medication, but the stem cell therapy that I'm currently involved in. It's all like little bits of help, and I just want all you guys out there to know, like, I appreciate being able to do that kind of stuff. Not that it matters to most, but it matters to me, and I'm glad that I can see a difference in being able to, like, tomorrow. Um, Anybody that knows me at all knows that I've always worked on stuff. I've always tinkered with stuff, worked on lawnmowers, motorcycles, cars. I've built a couple vehicles myself. I've always done, and I've done it all by, I'm not gonna say all by myself, but I've always done it. Like, I didn't pay people to do it. I did it. And getting sick, getting diagnosed with this disease is like really put the brakes on it. And because I haven't been able to do it, and I just can't do what I used to do. So that's been a hurdle to get over, but I think I'm doing pretty good at it. And like, my plan tomorrow is I had so many tools and like little things that you would have to work on stuff and build stuff, and I got rid of a lot of it because I moved and I don't have the place to keep all that stuff. But I did keep, I'm not going to say a lot because it's not a lot. I kept a minimal amount of my tools, hand tools, things that I can still, piddle around with, sockets and that sort of thing. And for the last 6 months, they've sat idle. I never even touched them. And working on the boss's car, I needed them. So I went and got them out. And at some point, there's some moisture in the sockets are a little bit rusted, but they're not ruined by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm trying to figure out an easy way I can get them cleaned up. And so tomorrow, that's my plan is I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and get these tools cleaned up a little bit. And I love being able to make stupid little plans like that. I say stupid little plans because there's times where I would spend days in the house in my chair, just sit around and not do anything. And it's not out of laziness. It's out of, like, no ambition. My life changed a couple years ago. It changed. I'm not going to say for the better or for the worse, because the good Lord put me on a path for some reason, but it really changed. And, I've just got to deal with it. I may be here a couple days. I may be here a couple decades. I don't know. I live every day and thankful every day for every breath I can get. I know I bitch and complain about having this hose, but I don't know what I'd do without it, to the point of it's got like some kind of security involved with it, to where, in the beginning it was like this damn hose, and now it falls off when I go to bed. And sometimes I notice, and sometimes my boss reaches over, puts her hand on my face and says, "Well, where's your hose?" But she can hear it, and it's I'm thankful I have her to be able to hear it and take care of me the way that she does. But all of that is because of the 80s and me growing up in the 80s, being a Gen Xer, and getting me to where I'm at. The ironic part is I went from living in the desert to living on the ocean because I moved from Mesa, Arizona to Dunedin, Florida. Did that in, I think, 1987. But that was quite a change. And, I was a blonde-headed kid that lived in the desert riding bicycles around, and then moved to a beach town in Florida where it rained every day. But I will also say, along with that came a lot of good memories. I had an uncle that lived in Marathon, which is one of the Keys, the southern end of Florida, and I got to spend a lot of time down there. He lived on a boat. It's actually a really unique story. I wish he was here so that somebody could interview him. I'd be glad to do it. But this man was so intelligent, and he built a boat in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in his backyard, I think it was 52 foot. 52-foot boat, made it out of steel, built it all. And he ended up sailing it from Lake Michigan all the way down to Florida, through all the locks, keys, and rivers, and got out into the Atlantic Ocean. And him and his wife lived on it. And I was able to go down there and spend a lot of time down there. I learned to scuba dive doing that. I fished. Like, he had this little boat, had a 2-cylinder diesel engine in it, and I remember taking that boat and fishing with it. And that's at like 13 years old. And to be able to do that then was one thing, because now, like, you can't trust a 13-year-old with nothing nowadays, it seems like. But the world's a different place for sure. So, I don't know. Like I say, I keep bringing up fishing because that's like, especially as I think about it, that fishing is just like riding motorcycles to me. I've literally like done it a huge part of my life. And when I was in Florida, I fished. I remember the biggest bass I've ever caught, like multiples, were literally in our backyard when we lived in Florida. There was a lake, a square lake that somebody had built to build houses around, and this sucker had like 5, 6, 7, 8 pound bass in it. And I remember for months I would fish, and I would fish for bluegill, and there would be like 100 bluegill, or brim, what they called them down there, and they would be like swarming the water, and then all of a sudden there'd be a big swish, and they'd all be gone, and then a minute or two later they'd all come back, and I never knew what that was. So I caught one of them bluegill and thumped it on the head and injured it a little bit, hooked it in its back. And it took me a couple of tries, but I was catching them big old bass off of bluegill that were, they were like that big. I'd throw them just outside where all the other bluegill were at. I'd throw bread and stuff on corn, whatever, on the water, get them all riled up. And then the big bass would come in, and I caught quite a few of them. And those were like, I think the biggest one had to have been 6 pounds, at 7 pounds, which was fun. I mean, a neat story. I remember fishing off the bridges, the causeways, with my brother. And it was just kind of cool because, like, my mom would drop us off and we'd walk way out on this bridge and sit there and fish for a few hours. And then we'd walk way back and she'd pick us up and leave. And it was like on a causeway, like on a freeway. And we were kids, and it's just a different time, a different place, I guess. I remember riding a Greyhound bus from Arizona to the Midwest, to Indiana. And then at the end of the summer, getting back on that bus and going on, a Greyhound bus, and going from Indiana back to Arizona. And it was just me and my brother, and he and I are a year and a half apart. So I don't remember. I'd have to do the math. I remember it was the year that my grandfather died. The summer my grandfather died. I think he died in the spring. I'm not for sure. No, I don't remember. It was the year. It was the summer after. Directly after. So it had to have been like probably like 83, I'm guessing. So I'd have been 11, and got on a Greyhound bus and rode it 1,800 miles, like no problem. I remember there was a black guy that, I think it was on the way, I'm not sure which trip it was, but I was just basically white-headed kid, and I'd sit down next to people and say, so, where are you going? And I'll never forget this black guy. He was probably in his late 30s or 40s. And I sat down next to him and I said, so where are you going? And he looked at me and he said with a real deep voice, he said, I'm going to heaven. And I didn't know what to think about that. He didn't want to have a conversation. But that's all he said, is he was going to heaven. And it's funny how there's certain things you just remember. And that was just like what I remembered. We had to make a couple bus changes too. And like, if I was 11, that meant my brother was like maybe 13. And just kind of crazy. Like, just crazy how the world different place. I don't even know if they have Greyhound buses anymore. But that was a trip, man. Talk about stinking and dirty. But that's how you traveled. But then again, you can look back in history, and this is a true story. You guys can check it if you want, but you used to be able to send a kid in the U.S. mail. The U.S. Postal Service used to, you could send a kid some other places through the Postal Service. Tell me how screwed up that is. Like, that's true. That's actually true. You could send your kid in the mail. Boy, nowadays, can you imagine? But anyway, I guess back to growing up in Arizona. I got to do a lot of things, and I was never really fond of my stepdad. But I will say he was somewhat of a sportsman, so I got to fish for little brook trout in the mountains. Very unique experience. We camped quite a bit. I'm not going to say he taught me, but I guess he would have been one of the first that like to shoot pow pows. He would have been one of the first that let me do that. But I don't ever remember hunting. I've never been much of a hunter. I hunted coyotes one time when I lived in Tennessee, and that was just like for something to do, but never really got into hunting too much. I don't think I'm much of a killer, unless it has to be done. I've had to do that a couple times. Out in Arizona, there was a place called Big Surf. It's not there anymore, but it was this huge wave pool, and to be out in the desert and hit these huge waves, that was cool. I got to experience that a couple times. Spent a lot of time at a place called Skateland, which was just down the road. I don't know, probably a mile from our house. And oh yeah yes, I'm glad you said that, because that Tonto National Forest was like that was a big part, because, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but like summer camp or church camp, our school would do that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that just really really brought back a lot of memories, because it's no secret, like I'd counted one time, and I think I went to 9 different schools in my school career. 9. And I quit school in the 10th grade. So, that's a lot of different schools. And the upside to that was, I think I went to Tonto camp like 3 times with different schools. So that was cool. I'm glad you brought that up. That really yeah, Tonto. Yeah, absolutely. Tonto, going to Tonto National Forest. I ran over my hose. Excuse me just one second. All right. But yeah, Tonto, going to Tonto National Forest. Yeah, that rainbow trout farm. I remember that. I certainly remember all those trout. Some of them were huge, and I think it could have been you, but I think we all didn't get to fish because it was you had to pay for it. But somebody caught one, and I think it was you, wasn't it? But yeah, the trout farm. I certainly remember that. Yeah, I sure do. They were big too. Some of them were big. Didn't you catch a big trout there? Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said them both, because there's so many things I've forgotten about even, but they're awesome memories. I told the story on here, so if you go back, 2 inches from free. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yep. That's funny. That is funny. Funny. But there were a lot of them in there too, man. I'm gonna, being a kid and so long ago, but there were probably like a couple thousand of them in that pond, because I remember there was a shit ton of them. Yeah, definitely good times. Definitely good times. Camping in that camper that went on the back of the truck. I remember that too. We all packed in there. I remember I had to sleep on the floor, and it was cold one time when we went, and that thing had like the double bed above the cab, and then it had bunk beds along the side. And I ended up having to sleep on the floor because, well, there was just so damn many of us. If you think about it, At one time, 6 kids and 2 adults. That's a lot in a camper, but definitely good times. But back to the Tonto Rim National Forest. Um, with school camp, I remember. I think I went 3 times, but it might have been only 2. I'm not for sure. Um, but they had these cabins that we stayed in, and they were people's. I can't even remember the names anymore. But one of them was haunted. George, that was the name of the cabin. The cabin George was haunted. So, being a young kid, yeah, yeah, being a kid and being there was always like freaky. And something else I did that when I was young, I was in. Let me think. I was in 7th grade, and I'll tell this story real quick. My not oldest, but my older brother got into a lot of trouble at school. He was pretty rebellious and belligerent in school, which I ended up being also. But he got put into, I think, called like a secondary school, and it was called Mesa Vista. And it was like he got kicked out of Powell Junior High, and I don't even remember for what. Got expelled, probably for not going or something, smoking cigarettes, whatever. But they sent him to a place called Mesa Vista, and it was like a secondary school, and it was one of the most unique things because he went from like 8:15 in the morning to 10:30, something like that, and then he was done. And he did that for a half a year, and he did so well there that my 7th grade, because I did 7th grade 2 times, my second 7th grade, my mom sent me there. And I went from 11:15 or 11:30 to 2:45, I think, was when I went to school, and that was it. And this was, what was I, 14? And they let us smoke. Like, you could have cigarettes on you, and we'd go back to the backstop on our breaks and smoke. And you called the teachers by their first name. Like, I remember my teacher's name was Steve, and that's what you called him, was Steve. You didn't call him Mr. Whatever. And we learned, and it was like you couldn't get in any trouble. They didn't put up with much, because then if you got in trouble there was no place else for you to go. So I mean, but the whole point of that story is we camped for 4 days in the foothills of the Superstition Mountains with backpacks, and man, was that a fun trip. Like, I think there was like 8 of us or 10 of us and 2 teachers. Steve was one of them, and I don't remember who the other one was. But took this group of kids, like rebellious kids, out into the foothills of the Superstition Mountains, and camped, like roughed it. We had to have our own tents, our own sleeping bags. Like, I think they prepared the food and cooked the food, but we backpacked and had canteens and all that. And that was just a cool, good time. That once again, it's just something that I'll never forget. An experience that I know a lot of people haven't experienced. Just and especially it was put on by this. The school did it. So like the school bus dropped us off, and we walked out into the mountains. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how else to say it. But yeah, that's what we did, and that was cool. That was a cool memory. And you said back and forth from Indiana in the camper. You know what I remember is when we left Arizona to move to Florida. My mom and stepdad rented a big U-Haul truck to put all of our stuff in because we moved. And he had I think it was a 1978 GMC. So at the time the truck wasn't 10 years old, but it was a GMC standard cab long bed 4-wheel drive. And they rented a tow bar to hook to the truck, and then pulled it with the U-Haul truck. And it had a topper on the back of it. And that's where I rode. I rode from Arizona to Florida in the bed of a pickup truck that was being towed by a U-Haul truck. And like, I can see all the illegal flags go up nowadays, but that's what I did. I had, my mom had this little like 4-inch TV with a radio on it. I think I had a cassette player. And yeah, I rode all the way from Arizona to Florida in the back of that pickup truck. Had a mattress back there, and I slept, and I had snacks and whatever. It's not like I was being abused, but like that was just one of those things. That's a long drive. That's a long way. And yeah, I got over there. Here, I'll tell you another story. About that time, say 2 or 3 months before that, I had a nice mongoose bicycle that was chrome, and I'd done a bunch of stuff to it, traded parts or whatnot, and I had it was a nice bike. And I used to go to the laundromat where they had 4 or 5 video games, me and my friends, and we'd go there and play video games. And it was a glass front, and we'd lean our bikes up against the dividers in the glass, and we were sitting there 2 feet away from our bicycles, but you had to walk 30 feet to the door and then go out the door and then back 30 feet. And we were sitting there playing video games one day, and this older guy, who was 15 or 16 or whatever, he walked up and grabbed my bike and took off with it, just stole it right there. And I'm 2 feet away from him, but there's a storefront in front of me, glass. And I couldn't do anything about it. Not that I could have anyway, because he was, much bigger than me, but he just stole my bike. And it bummed me out. It really bummed me out, because I liked this bike and I rode it all the time and whatnot. And then, and this is the deviant part here. And then I was told that we were going to be moving from Arizona to Florida. So me and my buddy Jimmy got this plan, and I was going to look for a bicycle that I liked, and I was going to take it. And at the same laundromat, this one was parked in the back. I seen a bicycle, and I liked it, so I took it. And at the time, we had moved out of our house and was staying with my oldest sister in an apartment. And I remember riding that bicycle as fast as I could, probably 1.5 miles or 2 miles. I pedaled it as fast as I could pedal it. And I got it to her house, and me and Jimmy, this was kind of around noon or so, me and Jimmy took tools and we took it all apart, not all, but a lot of it apart. And we put it in this wardrobe box and taped it all up. Then when my mom got home, I told her, she knew my bicycle got stolen. So I told her, I found my bike. And so I got it back. And she's like, you got your bike back? And I'm like, yeah, whoever stole it painted it and stuff, but it's my bike and I got it back. And she asked, well, where's it at? I said, it's in that box. And I don't want any trouble with nobody. So the next few days, I'm not going to ride it. I'll just, put it in the box, and that's that. So it got loaded onto the truck, and all the way to Florida it went. Got to Florida, got the box out, put the bike back together. And this guy had a bicycle that I didn't have to worry about getting in trouble with being stolen, because it was, 2,000 miles away where that happened. And the irony is it had spoked rims on it. And I rode it for a while, and then, I made friends with kids down in Florida, and I ended up getting a set of mags. The bicycle was white, and I ended up getting a set of Skyway Tough Wheel 2 mags and white tires to go on this bicycle. And I don't remember how I did what I traded or however I got them, but I got them, put them on the bike, and then 2 days later, somebody stole that bicycle, and I never seen it again. So yeah, the irony. I had this big deviant plan that it worked out, but it worked out until somebody else had a plan to take it from me, and that's what happened. So then, I don't think I ever had a BMX bike after that. I had several ones before that, but after that one, I think I'd gotten old enough where it just really didn't matter. And yeah, so when I then I don't know. I think it was about a year later, moved back to Indiana and didn't have a bike. So I guess that's what I get. Yeah, that's another story. Another story I totally forgotten about. There it is. I've snitched myself out. I stole a bike when I was 13 years old, 14 years old, however it might have been. Oh, good times. That's all I can say is good times. I remember figuring out how to get tokens from these arcades so I could play video games for free. And we did a lot of dumb stuff. I mean, there's no doubt. Me and my buddies, there was one guy, Michael Bradley, that we got caught, and they called the cops on us and everything. But we were just a couple dumb kids stealing a handful of tokens. So what were they really going to do? This was in Mesa in the city. Like they had so many other things to worry about. And they tried to scare us, no doubt. I think my mom had to pick me up at the police station that time or something. I don't know. But yeah, that was growing up in the 80s. Was sure a lot of fun. And I know there's a lot of people that bitch and complain about their childhood, but I'm really not that one. Times weren't always easy. And, I didn't always get my way, but I think, I have one daughter, and I couldn't imagine having 6 kids. I'm not real fond of my stepdad. He's gone now, but I've never been fond of him. But I can honestly say I can look back and he married a woman that had 5 kids. And that's more of a man than I am, because I sure as hell wouldn't have done it. Hell no. Hell no, I don't want no 5 kids. Instantly want 5 kids. Not a chance. But, they made it last for the better part of a decade, I guess. So it's not my business. But I know there's people out there that had it way harder than I did. And like I said, I'm not one to complain about that at all. I went to a lot of different schools. Most people I know, friends that I've had throughout my life, I've known a lot of people that went to kindergarten at the same school that they graduated from, or the same school system. And like I said, I think I counted it up one time. I'll do it right now if I can remember. So my kindergarten year, I went to Columbia City, Indiana. So that's one. My first grade class, I went to Hale Elementary School in Arizona. And if you're listening still, Scotty, that was when we moved to Glen Cove, when we first moved to Arizona. My second grade class was at Booker T. Washington, and that's when we moved to Los Altos. I went to Booker T. Washington. So that's 3 schools. And then from Booker T. Washington, I don't remember what grade it was, but I went to Roosevelt Elementary School. That's 4. Then from Roosevelt Elementary School, I went to Lincoln Elementary School. That's 5. And then from Lincoln Elementary School, I went to Powell Junior High. And then from Powell Junior High, which was my first 7th grade class, I went to Mesa Vista, which I just told that story. That was my second 7th grade class. From Mesa Vista, we moved to Florida. So I went to Dunedin Middle School. That was 8th grade. That's 8. That's number 8. And then moved back to Indiana, and I went to Rochester High School. So that's 9. And then in 10th grade, I quit. Never went back to school after the 10th grade. So I went to 9 schools in a 10-year, actually 11, because I did 7th grade twice. So anyway, that's a lot. And, there's people that would be bitter. We moved around a lot. And it was like out there, you move from one neighborhood to the next, you go to a whole different school. Like, where we live at now, the whole town, the whole city of Rochester went to that school for the most part. In Arizona, you could be 6 blocks away from a school you didn't go to. So it's a little bit of a different setup, but nonetheless, that's a lot of schools. And like I said, I've known people that like they went to the same school, uh, the same school system their whole life, and they grew up with people that they knew their whole lives. Me, it was literally like the opposite of that. I was this skinny little blonde-headed kid that had to learn how to be the new kid 9 times. So yeah. Anyway, good times. I wouldn't change it. Like I say, a lot of people would complain about stuff like that, and oh, I had such a hard childhood, or my parents weren't rich, or and it's just like I'm thankful to be alive. Thankful that I had parents that cared about me. Both my parents, my mom and my dad, both are still with us today. And I used to every Saturday I used to have breakfast with my dad, and we've kind of slacked off a little bit because of the medication I'm on. I'm not supposed to be around big groups of people, but like I spent a couple days here recently. I'll say I spend Saturday mornings with my dad, having breakfast, and it's been the last like 4 or 5 weeks in a row. On Sunday, my mom comes to my house and we play cards and have dinner. And man, I am so thankful for that. I'm 53 years old, still have both my parents, and still active. And my mom works a job still. She goes to, I don't think she goes every day, and it's like a part-time job, but she still goes to work. And yeah, I'm real fortunate. Because there's people who lost their parents at early ages, and as an adult, I get to know my parents, and it's pretty valuable. Pretty valuable. I lived a good part of my dad. I lived a good part of my life, and my dad wasn't in my life, and as an adult, we've gotten pretty close. I'd consider him one of my best friends, and man, I appreciate him. He's a veteran. He's a Navy veteran. The thing to remember, anybody out there that's bitter towards their parents, just remember they're doing it for the first time. Like, I remember when I became a father at 19 years old, and I remember thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And it's just like every day you just do it. Yeah, that's for sure. Making memories, that's for sure. Not just memories, but like building relationships. And we never know where we're going to go when we leave here. So I think there's people, especially families, you're connected, and you're always going to be connected. And even when you leave here, there's still a connection. Like my grandma. My grandma wasn't really fond of me. She was, and I'm man enough and honest enough to say, like, she loved my brothers way more than she loved me. I'll tell you that much. But I miss that old woman, and I was talking about it today. Like, and it's just the dumb stuff that you think about. She could fry chicken like nobody else, and she'd do it while she was doing like 2 or 3 other things. She made coleslaw like nobody else, and she didn't measure anything. She just did it. And you could always go to grandma's house, and she'd always say, "I'll fry you a hamburger. Are you hungry?" Or let me clear shit off the table so you can sit down. And it was just like she raised birds and saved newspapers, and was a product of the Depression, so she never threw nothing out. The floor had a slope in it. The table rocked. The table and chairs were 150 years old and had 3 coats of paint on it, but it was grandma's house. And the memories part of it is like, I think the house still stands, but it's nothing like it was. I know the outbuildings and the barns are all gone. And I remember being a kid and spending Christmas time there. And it's just like, it's funny because I was just talking about this today, but it's like you can never get away from, like, why can't somebody fry chicken like my grandma used to? And sure, it was different. It was a different chicken. She, like, they raised their own chickens and butchered their own chickens, but that's not what it was. It was like she just did things differently and learned how to do it and did it in a way that is unmatched by anybody. You know, my boss is a good cook. She's a really good cook. Like, she doesn't make things that I don't like too often because she's a good cook. But it's not my grandma. And it's just like my mom. My mom's cooking. She brought chicken and noodle the other day when she came up to play cards, and I finished them off today. And my boss, she can make a mean pan of chicken and noodles. But like, I ate this whole container full of it. And it was like, that's my mom's cooking right there. And I started thinking about stuff like that. And it was like, she made food that, like, there's nothing like mom's cooking. And I think everybody would agree, you know, there's nothing like mom's cooking, or, you know, nothing like grandma's cooking. You know, my grandma make chocolate chip cookies that I've never ate one that came close to it. And I've ate a lot of cookies. And I know, Mr. Scott, you're listening, you're a cookie connoisseur, and I think you'll agree 100%. Nobody made chocolate chip cookies like grandma did. And it's just funny how that stuff happens like that. Um, and I always remember, and I guess that's the important thing, is that we do have the memories to reflect on stuff like that. And it's not good to harbor bad memories, I guess. And, you know, you can all have bad memories. We can have them if you want. But in most cases, bad memories don't serve you well. So there's no sense in keeping them around. Like I say, I'm pretty fortunate. Maybe it's just the way that I look at stuff, especially nowadays. But I don't have many bad memories. I mean, like I said, there's not a lot of sense in keeping them around. And I've got so many good memories that I don't think I have room for bad ones. And I'm saying this for a reason. And I know one of the guys listening will understand when I say, um, people are bitter, and even as an adult, people get bitter about, you know, their parents or their upbringing or whatever, and it turns them into, I'm not going to say a monster, but it just turns them into somebody it's not becoming. And, you know, I think it's easy for me because of what I've been dealing with the last couple of years and this, and how you have to look at life and where you've been, where you're going. And it's like the bitterness is just not worth it. It's just really not worth it. And once again, I know there's people out there that have had some horrendous things happen to them in their life. And, you know, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I haven't had a whole lot of things like that happen. I've lost some people that I was close to. You know, and depending on how you look at pets, I've lost some pets that really broke my heart when I lost them. But to be my age and you know, not live under a rock, I've been pretty lucky. And I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for everybody else out there. I'm just giving you my view, my opinion, you know, on how it's been for me. Get back to the title of this, how it was for me growing up in the 80s as a Gen Xer, playing video games, listening to 80s rock, falling in love with 80s cars. Anybody that doesn't know me, 1979 to 1993, Mustang Fox bodies are my favorite. You can also throw Mercury Capris in there. I think they only built them to 86, maybe 87. But it's same platform, same car. I like the Thunderbirds. I like the 80s cars were awesome. They weren't the most powerful by any stretch of the imagination, but it's the generation I come from, and I like them. The music was good. The movies were awesome. the activities as far as like going to the mall, going to the movies, going roller skating, all that stuff was just great. And now, and even my life, so I can say this, everything revolves around this sucker right here. And even me, like being on YouTube, whoever thought I'd be a YouTube creator making videos talking about whatever, instead of going fishing or riding motorcycles or going skating, here I am. It's funny how the world works that way, but I really enjoy this part of the life that I have right now. I have no what's the word I'm looking for? Um, you know, I'm not bummed out. This thing makes it like a little tough sometimes, but you learn a way, and it's just like, I'm not as good as this by any stretch, but I look at it as like I've seen pets, cats and dogs and stuff. My daughter owned a cat that lost one of his legs, so you watch a dog that doesn't have a leg, that's missing a leg or even two legs, or watch a cat that's missing a limb and see how they act. They don't cry about it. They don't, they don't even know they're missing it. It's like you watch a three-legged dog run and he's faster than a four-legged dog because he's only moving three legs. And it's like, I don't want to complain because I don't have anything to complain about. I'm attached to this hose, but hell, I can breathe. Imagine me having my disease 100 years ago, where you didn't have this loud ass oxygen machine that was pumping oxygen through this hose all day. What did they do? They just got sick and they went to the wayside. So yeah, I'm thankful. And I think that's the way that everybody should look at things, is you can get down on the shitty parts, but it can always be shittier. And that's coming from my perspective. I'm not living everybody else's life. So I'm sure there's people out there that could argue that. And I wouldn't argue with them because, they're walking their own path. That's just my opinion. My advice to anybody is try to look at the sunshine. And I'm not perfect by any means. I look at cloudy days and complain and whatnot. But at the end of the day, at the full circle, you got to just look at the good parts, remember the good parts, and hey, in my opinion, it could always get worse. And no matter what you're going through in life, it could always definitely become worse. Once again, that's my perspective. But anyway, it's been an hour. I've been rambling on and on and on and on for an hour. So I'm going to cut it off. I don't want to go too long. But I am going to I'm going to refresh everybody here. I'm going to do a video on this. It's not abandoned. It's just like they don't use it anymore. It's a nursing home. There's still electricity there, but it's empty. There's no furniture in it. The carpet's still there. All the walls are still there. And it was built in the 1930s. And all the woodwork and stuff is still pretty much remains the same. But when I say the lights are on, it's not like all of them. It's just a really freaky place. For one, it's like some of the lights are on, some of them are not. Some of the rooms have lights on, some of them don't. I'm sure just because it was a nursing home, I'm sure there's death that took place over there. And I'll tell you a quick story here about this. I have access to it because where I live in this like retirement community, I get access to these buildings and these different services. And this one is like, these buildings are all connected. So I can go, there's a little restaurant here where we can go eat, and I can go from my house and walk outside for about 40, 50 feet, go into a building, and then I can walk probably a quarter of a mile or 3/8 of a mile and just stay inside of a building, go from one building to the next, and never have to go outside. So my boss and I walked that a couple of times, just because it's just like you're walking down these long hallways, and it's just pretty freaky. It's freaky because it's quiet, and it's like some lights are on, some are off. You expect these big old buildings to, have life in them, or, furniture or things set up, and there's just like not. There's sort of some storage stuff in there, but nothing major. But I'm going to go over there. I'm going to try to do it at night, and probably do it with this sucker right here, because this takes a better video than my camera up there does. But that camera up there has a light and a memory card, so I might have to do it with that one. I'm not sure exactly how. I need to get somebody to go over there with me, because I'm going to have this thing with I don't know, maybe I'll wear a backpack and put a tank in the backpack so that I got hands free. I've got a cart that I can wheel over there too. So I've got to get all this worked out, but nonetheless, I should have done it over Halloween, but I'm going to get this video going where it's like to show everybody out there how like creepy it is over there, and quiet, and you randomly run into somebody else walking through there. And it just kind of freaks you out. So that's what I've got upcoming. I struggle sometimes for things to talk about. I can make it like go from one to the next, the next, the next. But if anybody out there has any ideas on what they want to hear me blab on and on about, I'll do my best. So hit me up, send me a message, whatever. If you haven't subscribe to my channel. You can share the video if you want. I don't care if it gets out and about. I'm not trying to make money off of it, but I do makes me feel good when the channel grows. If you're watching this and you're not on Rumble and you thought about going to Rumble, go over to Rumble, check it out. You can see, let's see, it'd be right here behind me. That says 95 Sporty 1. You can go to Rumble and just get rid of the 1 and just go 95 Sporty. And you'll find me on Rumble. And then that brings up another thing. A lot of people have asked me, what the hell is 95 Sporty? You should have named your channel a little bit different. Well, I've had this channel for a long time. I just didn't do anything with it. Didn't make any videos. And 95 Sporty that's the first Harley Davidson I had. So when all this setting up accounts and, getting screen names and all that stuff, I put 1995, not 19, but 95 Sporty, which is a Sportster. And for short, you call them Sporties. So 95 Sporty 1, because you had to, add a 1 or whatever to it. So that's how that name come about. I'm not trying to be like, Eric Talk Shit. That should be the name of my channel, but I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm just kind of going off of the channel that I've had for, I'm going to say 10 years or better. So that's how I got that name. When I went to Rumble a couple months ago, I just kept with it. Either like hearing me talking content or not, share it around. I don't care. I want the channel to grow. I don't want to make millions of dollars, because I'm happy where I'm at as far as I get disability. I have help with my insurance and health care. I don't want to screw all that up. So I'm not trying to make millions of dollars doing this by any stretch of the imagination. But I like having the different people that I converse with, talk with. And, sometimes I've had, 15, 20 people in here chatting back and forth. And that's kind of cool to me. I dig it. So anyway, I appreciate whoever's out there watching. I know one of them. I think I know who the other one is. Not for sure, but whoever says there's 2 on here, I appreciate you sitting here and listening to me talk on and on and on. If you ever feel like you want to do this, let me know. I can split the screen right in half and have one person on one side, one on the other, and we can have a conversation back and forth. We can do it from these beautiful little iPhones if you want. So, all right, good night. I'll see y'all later, and I'll see you in the next day or two. I'll come up with something to talk about. All right, see you guys. Have a good day.